Welcome, everyone, to the 30-minute Midas touch from beautiful Dyersburg, Tennessee at the Herb Welsh WrestlePlex. Now, here is pound for pound and inch for inch, the best of the best in professional wrestling today. A wrestling genius worth his weight in gold. The Golden Boy, Greg Anthony.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 30-minute Midas touch. I am your host, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. And with me, as always, is my co-host. And from this day forth, he will be known as Gunther.
Oh, no.
The artist formerly known as Mark Tipton.
Oh, no. Yes. The co-host of this program is Gunther. Gunther, yes. Thank you for that. We begin the show each week with me getting a new moniker, a new name from time to time. And recent events have brought the concept of the naming, in this case of professional wrestlers, to the forefront, and it's kind of what we want to serve as the subject of this week's edition of the 30-minute Midas Touch podcast. And the unofficial working title, I suppose we could say, is What's in a Name? Now, for those of you, who are not literature buffs, that was popularized by the esteemed playwright William Shakespeare in Romeo and Juliet. There's a quote, "What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." Well, Mr. Shakespeare's point was that regardless of what you call it, the thing in and of itself, what it is, does not change by changing the label on it. However, Mr. Shakespeare never met Vincent Kennedy McMahon or the United States Patent and Trademark Office.
Or professional wrestling.
And at all. Yes, he predates all those things.
Yeah, I mean, and I think everyone listening should know where this is coming from. Obviously, WWE made the mind-boggling decision to change Walter's name to, is it Gunther or is it Gunther? I haven't heard. I didn't hear him.
I think it might be Gunther, but it may be just because of his accent. He's of Austrian.
Gunther.
Yeah, and
I think that's how it's actually pronounced over there.
Right,
Gunther.
and it probably is. And then if you Americanize it, so to speak, I think it becomes Gunther. But when he pronounces it with his Austrian accent, it is what it is. But no, this was a decision which, to me, as a fan of professional wrestling and a former fan of Tuesday night programming, it was just, like for the umpteenth time, confirmation of what this thing has become and how off the rails the direction has gone. For those of you who are not familiar with, and for instance, his name was Walter, and now when he pronounced it, it sounded more Walter. By his natural accent. And a lot of people, and I'd even hear Americans refer to him with kind of the V sound like that from time to time. But he is a person who had been a part of WWE NXT UK for years. In fact, he was their champion for, I think, 700 days.
Yeah.
And that entire time, he was known as Walter. He appeared in it on that program on NXT, and I believe he made a brief appearance on WWE programming during the Rumble one year, I think.
I think it was during Survivor Series.
Survivor Series, okay.
Survivor Series stuff.
Yeah, he did make an appearance, and all these instances, he was Walter. He is known around Europe. He is known as Walter. He has spent years carrying WWE championships as Walter. And yet, for some reason, someone determined that what we need to do with this guy to really get behind him and really, make him a star, is we need to stop calling him Walter and start calling him Gunther.
So let's back up for just a minute, though. So
it's hard to deal with this.
Yeah, I agree. It's when I first heard about Walter.
Yeah, it's fun to say it that way.
Yeah, when I first heard about him, I was like, what the hell? His name is just Walter? Like, I didn't get it either, you know what I mean? And, like, once I saw him and saw what it was, I got it. And he got it over, You say Walter.
And everyone knows.
Everyone in wrestling knows who you're talking about. So, to me, that's the hardest thing. Hardest thing in wrestling is to get something over, And they accomplished that. He got over as Walter, period. and it really, I don't think it was a thing of, what can we do to really get this guy to the next level? I think it was, hey, what can we do to own this motherfucker's name?
Right, or kind of take the credit for it.
Right. So, and that's kind of been the calling card of WWE for years. They've changed guys' names left and right. One of the ones that bothers me the most is Michael McGillicuddy.
Okay.
Yeah. Michael McGillicuddy, for those of you who don't know, who is actually Kurt Henning's son, Joe
Yes.
Henning. And for some reason, they didn't want to go with Joe Henning. I don't know why.
Right.
I mean, that's a good name. I mean, that's a good wrestling name. I mean, Larry the
Sure.
Axe, Kurt Henning, and Joe Henning. I mean, why?
There would be a lineage, a
Yeah.
built-in audience who would automatically gravitate to him. People
But
who were
that-
fans of his father.
Exactly. But they sold him on the fact of, oh, we don't want you to try to be like your father. We don't want you to be in that shadow, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, Randy Orton is,
Right, and talks about his lineage constantly.
Yeah. So I just don't. I don't agree with that at all. Obviously, I mean, to me, like I said, if my kids, decide one day to wrestle, you know what I mean, and they could use my name to kind of push it along a little bit, I'm all for that. You know what I mean? I think that's I think any parent should have that same mindset. If your child can use what you've accomplished to parlay that into success for themselves, that's the dream, right? That's the American dream, that we're making generational differences each generation, where people we get better and better. So for me, him being known as Michael McGillicuddy was just a slap in the face to just wrestling history in general.
Certainly, and why? This has been a constant problem for me. It has come up over and over again, and it's been a real pet peeve, or a thorn in my side, however you want to say it, because it comes up over and over again. And then an immediate parallel is, let's refer to Ashley Fleer,
Right.
who, during her time in NXT, the real NXT, was frequently referred to simply as Charlotte. Now, it was not debated who she was, but when she made her jump to the main roster, the last name suddenly reappeared.
Right.
And it made perfect sense too. Why would you not? There's one of the more famous names in the industry. But when you have the son of Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, why would you not reference that? And I also thought about Ted DiBiase's son.
Yeah.
Appeared there.
Yeah.
And he was
Ted
DiBiase.
Yeah.
It just baffles me, and how they arbitrarily do this. The Walter one sticks out to me because he wrestled as a WWE product, a talent of WWE, wrestled with that name, used it. It was promoted, and yet. Well, I know we spent years with you carrying one of our championships, and there's a whole continent of people who know you as Walter.
Yeah.
And this is the World Wrestling Entertainment here.
Yeah.
We're just going to do away with all that. And it seems almost flippantly.
It is. And the thing about it too is, like you said, they do it so haphazardly, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it. Now, there's always been. There's times to change people's names, and obviously that's when, hey, whatever we're doing isn't fucking working. You know what I mean? That's a good time to change the name. But it used to be in professional wrestling, we did it a lot less under the radar. We did it where we didn't want them to know. If we were changing their name completely, we didn't want them to know it was the same person. You know what I mean? But now they just don't care. It's blatant that we're changing this person's name, and we're not talking about, like I said, when something's not working. The ringmaster Steve Austin,
There you go.
Became Stone Cold Steve Austin because
Right.
obviously that worked. Stone
Right.
Cold worked because the ringmaster was floundering.
Well, here's the obvious question. Could you imagine the ringmaster main eventing WrestleMania?
No. I mean, just the fact that he was just called the ringmaster.
It's like, no, that's not a main event. It just didn't work. It didn't fit. And so you went with it. But Walter has worked.
It got over. Yeah.
And yet, it's kind of, if it ain't broke, why are you fixing it?
Because we want to own his name.
Yes, there's the reference to the United States Patent and Trademark Office again.
Yeah.
I strongly feel that this comes up again, and really, this kind of got off on a sidetrack. The particular name, evidently, there are people who are more adept at this now that looked at the records that WWE has applied for with patent, and they found out that they applied for a trademark for Gunther Stark is the name they actually applied for.
Yeah. And he was a Nazi submarine
Yes,
commander.
it turns out that people who did a simple Google search determined that happened to be the name of a German U-boat captain during World War II. Yes, the bad guys from World War II. And here we are. And this level of seeming incompetence that struck me in the face. If you're going to go to the trouble to make a filing with the United States Patent and Trademark Office to legally trademark a name for one of your talents, would you not, before doing so, take the time to do a simple Google search to see that name doesn't have any negative connotations to it before making a filing?
Well, I also think, too, that was... I think this is what I think happened. I think whoever came up with that idea didn't let anyone know that it was actually a Nazi U-boat captain. Like they came up with the name Gunther Stark and thought it was good,
right?
So they pitched it and they went with it.
Yeah,
that
sounds great.
And like I said, he probably underestimated the WWE universe and our, our ability to look things up. Because we're going to look everything up, right? We're going to find out why the hell they call him Gunther Stark. So immediately we're going to do that, and what happens?
Well, and as I mentioned, the Walter is, and I'm going to have our time ever calling him that name. I will refer to what they call him, but to me, he's Walter.
Well, yes,
but he is of Austrian nationality.
Yeah,
which is obviously, in his appearance and his speech, resembles people of German descent, and then you give him that name to that individual who is going to, kind of fill out the stereo. He just because of the way he naturally speaks and talks. It's and I was like, why?
And we're dealing with the same thing right now too with Braun Breaker.
Why?
Yeah, why isn't he Braun Steiner or Bronson Steiner? I mean, why? You know what I mean? And it can't. We hope it's not something as superficial as, well, we don't like Scott Steiner, and we don't want to promote a Steiner name and have him make money off of it. Who gives a shit at this point? I mean, you guys are $1 billion company.
Right. Whatever Scott Steiner's going to do what Scott Steiner does.
Whatever. Yeah.
You cannot make plans around Scott Steiner, from what I can tell.
No. Completely unpredictable.
No, you just let him go. But even from the very first time I saw him, they immediately began making references to his family history. In his first match, they a dog-faced. He had the tenacity of a dog-faced gremlin or something came across from the announcers, and all these things, and the way he dressed, everything was directly taken from it. In the match in which he became the NXT champion, he used the Steiner recliner to win the match. I'm left with that.
Steiner line.
Rick's
power slam spot.
Yeah.
He did the Bulldog.
The Bulldog. All those things.
Yeah.
Taken directly from it. But they didn't take the name. And unless for whatever reason they are not able to trademark the Steiner name for some reason, I do not know. And it just baffles my mind. This comes up over and over again. And this is not new. No. I suppose for older fans, I will go back, and one that remembers me is what many consider to be the greatest tag team of all time, the Road Warriors.
Right.
Were known around the country by the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors.
Yeah.
When they made the decision to go to WWF and they joined it, it was obvious to me, who had watched the Road Warriors for years. Every time I saw them, I never heard the words Road Warriors. All I heard was over and over again, Legion of Doom, which they had used previously, but it wasn't what they were known as. It was like they had to make this our own.
You have to refresh my memory on something right quick. Now they were the Legion of Doom. Was actually a faction originally in Georgia, and they were a part of
Okay.
that faction. It was King Kong Bundy and Paul Ellering was part of that, and
Okay.
Jake the Snake, and
I believe that's
that
good.
was the Legion of Doom, and that's where it ties into them.
Yeah.
Now, see, when they were in WWF, was it Road Warrior Animal and Road Warrior Hawk, the Legion of Doom?
I see. I don't remember, and now this is dangerous. I'm going back many years
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
but I don't remember them using the term Road Warriors. It was always the Legion of Doom.
Yeah.
On the merchandise, it was Legion of Doom. Legion
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Doom, Hawk and Animal, the Legion of Doom.
Yeah,
They
I'll pay attention to that next time I'm watching. From
and
that
I need to
time
go
period.
back because it was like something that stood out to me, and I didn't. What? No, they're the Road Warriors.
Yeah, and let's go back to the Hennings, for instance. Kurt Hennig became
Sure.
Mr. Perfect,
Exactly.
and what they do this smart little thing, especially back then. What they used to do is they go, "Oh, he's Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig,"
Right.
like it's a moniker. Then
Right.
eventually,
It's a title.
yeah, and then they eventually drop the Kurt Hennig part. And now he's just Mr. Perfect. They did the same thing with the Big Show. Originally, he was Paul White,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, he was the Big Show Paul White. And then after a month, he was just Big Show.
Just Big Show. and to this day, and in fairness to them, to this day, I have seen him as he appears on AEW television. Occasionally, people, Jim Ross, I love him, and he catches himself referring to him as Big Show. Because for how many years, and granted, he was, I guess it was the Giant was in WCW, which that never stuck. But Big Show, that really did stick with him.
Mm-hmm.
And as I recall, when he first appeared on AEW, he wore a T-shirt that said "No more BS," which is a kind of a double entendre there. It has double meaning there, and I understand it. But calling him Paul White doesn't feel natural because when I see him, I guess this is this is branding. I guess is what we're talking about. The importance of branding, because when I see him, I think Big Show.
Yeah. And it's just like I said, and they do it to pretty much everybody. I don't care if it's like some relatively unknown indie guy that they bring in, but when someone has a name value already, let's
something
just
established.
Something that even if it's a very small percentage of your audience, it's still better than nothing. You know what I mean? So let's take that small percentage and let's grow it, but at the same time, let's not alienate these fans that already know what their names are. Do you have any more examples?
Well, there's a couple because this thinking is arbitrarily applied.
Yeah.
There are two most recent ones that come to mind. Well, there's actually three. Let me go with CM Punk. WWE never owned CM Punk. That name was something that Phil Brooks had before, and as far as I know, it's his property. That's his intellectual property, or however you want to define it. And that's why he was CM Punk before, and he's CM Punk now. The person who draws the most immediate comparison to him, because they both happen to be in AEW at the moment, is the artist now known as Bryan Danielson, who from in ROH was Bryan Danielson. The American Dragon thing, as he came out of the training with Shawn Michaels, etc. He was primarily known as the American Dragon. But upon coming to WWE, Bryan Danielson becomes Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, and that's when it's like, and like you said, it's very arbitrary. Like, why does CM Punk get to keep his name? But a guy like Daniel Bryan,
is Daniel Bryan, not Bryan Danielson.
Yeah, exactly. Bryan Danielson was definitely an indie darling. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
He was known as one of the best in that role. So why not capitalize on it? And they never uttered the words American Dragon.
No.
They never went that road at all, which to me was a mistake as well, because that's a unique name too. And,
sure.
And it of course they don't like to put over Japanese stuff anyway, but that's part of the issue too.
And along this lines, I'll try not to beat this in a dead horse, because the other one that's near and dear to my heart that went the opposite of the Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, was when we saw the debut of AJ Styles.
Yeah.
Who throughout his career primarily in TNA, I'd seen him in some smaller promotions, but he kind of came to prominence at a national level with TNA as AJ Styles. He then spent some time in New Japan, etc., AJ Styles. And then when he debuted at the Royal Rumble in, I want to say 16?
15 or 16.
15, okay.
15 or 16.
Okay. It was in that neighborhood. But when he debuted, like many others, I was going nuts as soon as I saw him. And I could not believe, I guess I was kind of jaded at this point.
Sure.
When I saw him and they referred to him as AJ Styles, I couldn't believe it.
Right.
I thought if he ever came to this company, they're going to rename him something else. They're going to make him something else.
Yeah.
But we've seen AJ Styles
Mm-hmm.
through a year-long championship reign. AJ Styles.
Yeah, and it's very arbitrary. Like, he got to keep his name. Bobby Roode became Robert Roode, which isn't a big deal.
No,
but I mean,
that's fine.
That's fine. He got to keep the majority of what he was doing.
Sure.
Yeah, but who makes these rules? Why is it not? I mean, I don't like the guy, but why is Kevin Owens not Kevin Steen anymore?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why didn't they not? Like, where's the difference? Show me the difference between Bobby Roode and Kevin Steen. You know what I mean? Like, show me the reasoning you have for this. You know, so I really just don't understand the thought process. And fun fact, by the way, when AJ Styles debuted, I heard that Vince McMahon actually thought no one would know who he was, and like the reaction at the Rumble was enormous,
Oh, no.
right? And he really thought no one's gonna care, and fucking sure enough, it was huge reaction. And on that same note, I want to throw this at you too. I just read earlier that Bruce Pritchard has said that Vince McMahon could run WWE for another 25 to 30 years. So where do you think we'll be wrestling wise in close to 2050?
For the sake of a podcast,
Sure.
it is not always the best to leave your co-host at a loss for words, but that's what you've just done. That notion, well, coming from Bruce Pritchard, I suppose it
Yes, man, and definitely
extraordinaire.
Yeah.
If you wanted a textbook definition,
Yeah.
you could put the picture in the book right there.
Absolutely.
Insert Mr. Pritchard here. Oh my goodness! But that just disturbs me because AJ Styles had been on national television on Spike TV for a number of years.
Yeah, but like
But
Cornette always says, like Vince McMahon does not watch any other wrestling.
Well, and I will be honest. I'm at a point where I'm a long-term professional wrestling fan, but my growing animosity towards the WWE is occasionally getting the best of me because I watched this within the WWE. People, you mentioned how he doesn't watch other promotions. He probably didn't know TNA existed. For instance, when they brought in Mickie James for the Royal Rumble, they announced that.
Yeah.
I don't think when they called her, I don't think anyone there knew she was working for Impact Wrestling at the moment.
That's a possibility.
They weren't opening the forbidden door. They were just calling someone back to fill out the Rumble match because they didn't have enough women left on the roster after their series of Future Endeavor visits. But I saw this. As I've mentioned, I'm a fan of real NXT. And I witnessed over and over and over again talent who had had success within WWE company. And, they work for your company. They are there. They are having success with a character, with a persona, however you want to find it, with whatever it is you want to define them. And then when they leave NXT and appear on Raw or SmackDown, it is like they're starting from scratch. Even when NXT was on national television, on the same network as Monday Night Raw, 24 hours following Monday Night Raw, a person appearing on one who moved to the other would be treated like they're brand new.
Yeah, and that's part of the we make movies, we're not professional wrestling kind of mindset anymore. We've seen it time and time again. I'm trying to think of some more people that had unfortunately had their names. Here's one. Shane Helms.
Okay.
Shane Helms, he was the Sugar Shane Helms
Sure.
in WCW. He was starting to make a name for himself. Of course, then the sale happened, and he was snatched up by his contract was
Oh, sure, he was part of the
absolved with WWE, absorbed,
absorbed. Yeah, they
absorbed with
may have
WWE,
well.
and all of a sudden he couldn't be Shane Helms anymore because guess what? We have Shane McMahon. So so now you're Gregory Helms.
Yes.
And another instance of that is Steven Regal.
Ah,
I mean, he was Steven Regal for well over decades,
sure.
and doing a fabulous job. Obviously, in this also, well, we got too many Steves right now, so you're William Regal.
Yeah, we can't do that. Well,
and that worked. I'm not
well,
saying it didn't. I'm just
yeah. Well, and that I don't know. I guess I could be fair. My recollection, you may correct me if I'm wrong, is that part of the reason Steve Austin became Steve Austin was because at the time he started, Dr. Death Steve Williams was a part of the promotion he was part of, and they went, and I think his real name is Steve Williams, is it not?
Yeah, he's actually adopted, but yeah,
Okay.
Steve Williams is his government name.
Okay.
But like
And so
Doctor Death wasn't a part of the same company, but he was a major star.
And they didn't want to create confusion.
Exactly.
So see, there's a rationale.
Yeah.
You can say, well, that'd be a confusing thing. We don't want to do that. Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I get
The one that has stuck. There's one other that has stuck on me for quite some time and I've brought this up before, and that is the team of the Dudley Boys, who wrestled in ECW prior to ever joining WWE, and they were Bubba and Devon Dudley, the half brothers, sons of Big Daddy Dudley, who came to WWE. For some reason, stopped wearing tie-dye and started wearing camouflage. Not a big deal.
Sure.
But upon the time they left WWE, they could no longer use the term Dudley Boys. They became Team 3D. Brother Ray, not Bubba Ray.
Brother Ray.
Right. And Brother Devon. And they had to do that and call themselves Team 3D. They could not use Dudley. And the Dudley Death Drop simply became 3D. They were, because 3D is Dudley Death Drop. But you can't say Dudley Death Drop because of Dudley. They don't own Dudley, but they were able to use 3D.
Yeah, I see so many different sides of this. Like, as a wrestling promoter, I understand trying to protect your own product and things like that. But also I see it as, well, a wrestler, and as much as they probably don't want to admit it, it's actually more of a partnership between the talent and the company. The company is using the obvious talents, of this person to enhance a character. You're both putting in some kind of effort, a 50-50. One guy's doing all the in-ring work and you're doing all the promotional work, so it's almost like a 50-50 kind of thing.
Right.
And I wish there was some kind of, like you said, some kind of process to where guys could keep their names.
Well, sure.
If so, it's like there's people I've heard tell me that basically WWE gifted their name after so long or something like that. Basically,
when they felt it wasn't
when it wasn't a big deal. Yeah, like I think even Brian Christopher at some point, he got to keep the Grandmaster Sex A.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And even you talk about the Dudley Boys becoming Team 3D. We also had the New Age Outlaws.
Right.
And they became the Voodoo Kin Mafia.
Yeah.
VKM,
Yeah.
Vincent
Kennedy
McMahon. Yeah. And they were Kip and
Kip
Jesse
James and
Jesse James.
Yeah, okay.
The James Gang.
Yeah, Kip.
They were the James Gang at one point too, and but then there was a band called the James Gang, and I think they got in trouble there.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't have worked either. But it's just over and over again, and I have seen talents who have left. Let's say two maybe lesser knowns. I've seen where people try to get around this by using phonetically similar things. For instance, Nick Dinsmore, who was Eugene, became the letter U and Gene. Or Hornswoggle became just Swoggle.
I think the greatest one though was Christian, because Christian they trademarked Christian. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when he left, he trademarked Christian Cage. And that was completely different. That was enough.
Well, sure.
That he could. So he went back to Christian Cage, and everybody's like, motherfucker.
Right.
He got over on him. So he owns Christian Cage. So when he goes to WWE, he's Christian, but then he still gets the rub either way. I think that was ingenious myself.
Kudos to
the
Christian.
Canadian wins again.
That's right. Yeah, don't mess with the Canadians. They're something else. It's something that it just I don't know. It seems much ado because I just wonder how much it really, and at the bottom line, where they, is this a big money maker difference for them? Because you don't have the talent. Well, and I guess the thing that shows, you talked about the partnership between the talent and the promotion in this case. Keeping the trademark name doesn't mean you can readily use that to make more money for yourself. And what comes to mind here is when we had the new Diesel and the new Razor Ramon.
Right.
Those were characters or trademarks of WWE. The talents left and went to another promotion, and so they decided to come up with a new Diesel and a new Razor, and it fell rather flat rather quickly.
Yeah, it fell flat rather quickly, but it made Kevin Nash and Scott Hall more money in WCW. Did you ever hear that story?
No.
So when WWF came out and they said next week we're gonna have Diesel and Razor Ramon, and fucking the WCW officials freaked out. They were thinking that they were jumping.
They thought it too.
They thought they were jumping back. And like Nash and them were like, no, we're not jumping back. Like, well, we're gonna give you that. I think that was something ridiculous, like $400,000 a piece or $500,000 a piece.
Some kind of bonus or
some kind of bonus to not go.
Oh,
right?
No.
And then it turned out it was that rib, that fake Diesel and all, and they're just like, oh, we got over on that one.
They worked the management of WCW.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't think they didn't know what was going on. They said Razor.
Well, no, WWE did.
Exactly, but like that's what I'm saying. Scott Hall and Kevin didn't know. They were just just like I don't know what they're doing.
Excuse me, I did not realize that. That is, it's a comedy. Just why do you make this so hard?
But anyways, we are over time. Not too bad, 31 minutes. So for myself, the Golden Boy Greg Anthony, and for my co-host today, Gunter, the artist formerly known as Mark Tipton. Thank you and good day.